Today, Kilroy goes off the shelf on nuclear war, or how I learned to stop worrying and love the bomb. Earlier this week, I was looking at Red Menace, and the map reminded me eerily of ICBM, which got me thinking about nuclear war, or the threat of it as used in games. This diving into the rabbit hole of increasing diversions was like a bad episode of James Burke's Connections. Anybody remember that? Brilliant series, but I digress.
Ever since I saw those little plastic mushroom cloud pieces from the Risk-like game Supremacy, I was fascinated how nuclear weapons might be portrayed in a game setting.
I even took some high-level classes in college on the arms race. And some of these topics were a lot heavier than, or some of these books and classes were a lot heavier than I had expected. The unthinkable thought of using nuclear weapons has haunted me since I was a young boy, seeing those horrible pictures of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, or the after effects, or listening to the eerie lyrics of OMD. Can you really put that into a game? Well, yes.
I divide those type of games from my collection into three categories: pre-game warm-up, quarterback option, and game time. Hey, the NFL draft was this week. Sorry.
Games falling under the pre-game warm-up generally handle nuclear war as a potential end result, or more often as the in-game trigger. Typically, you never actually fight the war or use the weapons. And these games include, 13 Days, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and its little brother, 13 Minutes, which, by the way, is what my wife calls our sex life, another topic. There's the Twilight Struggle, which, has the DEFCON chart, which when you get to DEFCON 1, you lose the game or the game is over, and the person that caused it to go to the DEFCON 1 is the ultimate loser. You don't always go to DEFCON 1 in this game, but that is one of the end triggers. And then, of course, you have Labyrinth, which doesn't talk about nuclear weapons specifically, but it talks about WMDs and, getting an WMD into the United States, which would cause the United States to lose. Not to forget, that's a heavy one because I got everything stuck in there. Not to forget the Euro side of things. You have Manhattan Project, which also has several kind of expansions or offshoots of it as well that deal with developing nuclear weapons. And this is basically a worker placement game where you are going to work on developing and getting the elements to create the bombs, like uranium or plutonium, and then building bombs. But you never actually use them. It's the point of building it and getting to the end of it. These games all focus on the lead up and not the actual use of weapons. Next, you have our quarterback options. These are historical or alt history games where the use of nuclear weapons is treated as optional, either through optional rules, what if scenarios, or the like. My first experience with this was good old Hitler's War, an Avalon Hills game where you actually develop the atomic bomb. You have a research track, which is kind of reminiscent of some of the Axis and Allies type research, but you actually have a research track where you develop the A-bomb, and so it is actually an option in this game. And not to be outdone, World in Flames Blitz also has a rule for developing the A-bomb as well in a World War II context or as an option. Then you have Second Fleet, or the entire Fleet series. And it has rules for basically tactical nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear warfare as an optional rule, but goes on for about a page total, talking about using tactical nukes in in a modern war theater. Now, there's been a lot of releases of games from the same period as the Fleet series, like NATO, Third World War, and the next War series, which is kind of taking a more futuristic look. But those games have, I don't have any of those, but my understanding is that those games have rules or options for tactical nukes as well. And in that same vein is the Iron Curtain, which is dealing with, a hypothetical World War III in Central Europe, and has several scenarios that go from 1945 to 1989. And it, of course, has rules for nukes and chemicals, and how do you use those, and what are the effects of using those. And you actually even have a game from the Korean War from Victory Games, that basically had rules on atomic weapons and how it affects, this is an optional rule, but it basically has kind of an indirect or effect on global tension and how you roll for that. But again, not to be outdone from war games to Euro games, there are several Civ Building type games or Civ Builder games that allow you to use a research track, much like in Hitler's War, but you develop the technology of your civilization, and a lot of these have the ability to develop atomic weaponry and actually use it. In fact, last time I played this, my son did nuke me. Kids these days. Also, a little nugget that I found lying on my shelf somewhere is Superiority from NOO-kyuh-luhr Games, which is really kind of a basic, almost Stratego type game. At least some of the effects on it is relatively basic, but it has optional rules that you can actually get into nuclear weapons in this game. As you see there, it's a level 1 of level 4, because that made a lot of sense of how those complexity scales were. But this is part of their album game series, and this dealt with nuclear war as well. This game came out in the 80s, but allowed you to actually use the weapons, again, back into my quarterback options section. Finally, it's game time, where the primary focus of the game is all-out nuclear war. Now, this includes the classic nuclear war, which I don't have, but I have nuclear escalation and nuclear proliferation. And basically, this was a very silly, irreverent, meant to be silly, irreverent game on nuclear war. And maybe call it satire. But basically, you had these cards that you play. It's basically a card game that you're going to be playing on your country map, and you're going to be matching up missiles, which tells you how much megatons you can carry, with how much megatons, which tells you how many people you destroy. And there's your people, and that's your population, and that's the whole role of the game. Now, these came with a glow-in-the-dark die there, and then the nuclear proliferation came with this, I don't know what you call that, but that's a interesting die there. So, again, not serious, and probably not respectful to nuclear war, but let's just consider that satire. Then, of course, you have ICBM, which is a step up from nuclear war, but not much. I mean, this is more of a hex and counter game, as you see here with the map. You have United States and Soviet Union, and the counters are missiles, and basically it's a missile fest of missiles launching and going back and forth to each other, which again, brings me back to Red Menace and the Red Menace map, which is color and black and white. So it brings us back full circle, which kind of got me on this, roundabout way of talking about nuclear weapons. James Burke would be proud of my efforts, at least I hope. So anyway, that's what I have. And again, this is just games in my collection. Your mileage may vary. Your collection, of course, varies. And I just thought I'd take you on this little journey down the nuclear road. Hey, for those of you watching on my channel and not seeing this on No Enemies Here, this is bonus content. I want to thank each of you for, liking, subscribing, disliking, it's your right, commenting, of course, but most of all, just watching, spending some time with me. This is now my 301st video. Never thought I'd get here. And then based on when you're watching this weekend will be my second anniversary. So I started this up during COVID, doing a little bit of videos here and there, trying to focus on wargaming primarily, but also kind of going off the beaten path every once in a while, and trying to still find my voice or find my messaging, so to speak. But of course, I'm doing this because I like it and doing it for myself, but there was no point in doing it if there wasn't anybody watching it or liking it or commenting about it. So thank you all so much. Have a good one. Thanks for watching.